All right, I'd like to begin the Tiburon Parks Open Spaces and Trails Commission meeting for March 21, 2023. Thank you, everybody, for being here in person. David, could you please call the roll?
Chair Burr?
Here.
Commissioner McInerney?
Present.
Commissioner Judge? Here. Commissioner Hornbrook?
Present.
And Vice Chair Nick Farr is absent today.
All right, next, any oral communications?
So at this time, if there's anybody here present in the chambers that would like to speak about any item that is not currently on the agenda, you may do so at this time. You'll have 3 minutes to come up to the podium and speak.
Not seeing any hands here and not being hybrid quite yet, I think we can close oral communications and move on to commissioner or staff briefings. Are there any commissioner or staff briefings? Seeing none on the commissioner side, any staff briefings?
Staff briefings, I just want to let the Post Commission know that staff is working with Caltrans, diligently with Caltrans, on this new paving project that's happening in the summer of 2024. And I'm happy to say that their preliminary plans that they have right now show Class 4 bike lanes on Tiburon Boulevard from Highway 101 all the way up to Blackie's Pasture, with a few spots near the cove that are going to have the Class 1 for pedestrians and bikes. So we're moving forward, working with Caltrans actively on this project. We should be clearing environmental here in the next couple months, and then after that move on to design. So as their proposed layouts currently show, Class 4 bike lanes on Tiburon Boulevard. So that's a welcome to all of us here on the peninsula.
May I ask a question on the staff briefing? Not really.
Not really,
okay.
no.
Okay, cool.
You can email me.
Well, you brought up he can ask a question.
You can ask a question, but I guess we can't
Can't discuss.
Can't answer it, discuss it.
Well, you can answer it. Is Tiburon Boulevard, California, Highway 131?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's a question you can answer. So
I was just going to ask, maybe we can agendize that for our next meeting.
Okay, that'll work.
Info item, love to learn more at that next one.
Okay.
Okay, minutes. I'd like to move on to the minutes. Hopefully everyone has received the minutes from January 17th, 2023, and give folks a moment if you haven't. Let us know if you haven't received those, and we definitely entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Do we have a motion?
My only comment is, did you correct my name? Okay.
Yes.
Motion to approve minutes from the last meeting. March? January.
Second.
Okay. I guess since I remember this from the council meeting, since we are on TV, I don't have to do a roll call. I'll just say who's in favor, aye, and who's not, no. So who's in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
No nays, so motion's approved.
Great. Well, then we can.
Chair, if I may just interrupt, somebody emailed me to make sure that town staff should be looking for public comment by email and do not turn off mics. That's what I received from the press. You're welcome.
Yes. No comments so far.
I'm here to serve.
All right, want to move on to informational item number 1. David, do you have to tee this up, or can I just get started?
You can get started, yes.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to pass out just an item that we will post on the website subsequently here to my fellow commissioners. It's just a matrix of different rules and regulations regarding state and some of the local e-bike regulations. This is just on as an info item because I personally would like to have an ongoing kind of discussion and checking in on where the e-bike rules are. As we looked at our last meeting, there were 3 state bills that made some changes overall to the law as it regards to e-bikes. And part of, the reason I kind of want to keep this item live is that there was a bill, AB 1946, we talked about last time, that is requiring the CHP to develop safety standards and training programs for e-bikes by September 1st. And the whole idea is to create this central authority for e-bike safety regulations, so all the localities are not just sort of doing it on their own. I don't know that CHP has not developed anything along those lines quite yet. And when those regulations are developed, and as we've had an opportunity to take a look at them, I definitely want to make sure we're using that as a town, as a resource, and figure out what we can do locally to make sure if there's anything good in those programs, want to figure out how we can utilize those here in the town of Tiburon. Last time when we had this item as an info item, I only talked about those 3 bills that were updates, and I realized I personally had not gone through sort of the different regulations for e-bikes as it pertains by the state, by the county, by some of the other districts here, like Marin Municipal Water District, and then how each of the different cities take a look at e-bikes. I thought there was more differences between the various cities, like between Mill Valley, Sausalito, and Tiburon. I haven't really found any major differences, but this is an ongoing doc that I wanted to share with everybody and continue to kind of populate it between this meeting and then our next meeting, if that's fine. And take a look at what other areas are doing. Recently, the city of Palo Alto actually voted, it was the beginning of March, to straight prohibit all e-bikes on one of their coastal parks, the popular Baylands Trail people might be familiar with. I want to be crystal clear, it was not my goal here to start making moves like that. It's just more wanted to make sure this version of Post is talking about the different rules and regulations in Marin and beyond that, because I feel like there's going to be continued calls to make sure that e-bikes are being operated safely. We're not, doing this for the first time, of course. Post, I think, visited these regulations back in 2016. And that's when our last set of e-bike regulations, as far as I know, were updated, whereas the county updated their county regulations back in September 2019. I will stop there. And David, if we can, I know I got this to you late, but I'd like to be able to post this on the agenda subsequently.
We'll do that.
Okay. And I know I can't recall here on this particular item, are there any commissioner questions or feedback? Yes.
Well, Chair Bird, first of all, thank you for putting this together. This is awesome. I appreciate that.
No problem.
I guess the first question I have is on Marin County. So all the data on here is just in relation to e-bikes, correct?
Thank you. Yeah, these are all just related to e-bikes. So this does not count as scooters.
Or just bicycles.
Yeah, or bicycles. This
Right.
is only related to e-bikes. As we continue to take a look at this, we'll probably populate that to make matters part of why I wanted to be on top of this. There's also a bill in the legislature right now to actually create classifications amongst different scooters. It has not had a hearing yet. It has a hearing that's going to be set next month. And that could further delineate classifications for scooters. I can't comment on whether that bill is going to move or not, but it could certainly complicate how each of the localities deal with motorized scooters on top of e-bikes.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner questions? Hearing none, David, can I open this up for public comment?
Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you.
And at this point, it's since we're not on a hybrid, it's whoever's present in the chambers, and also if I receive any emails from anyone outside of chambers.
Great. So no pressure to anybody in the chambers right now, but are there any public comment or questions on this informational item? All right, pressure not administered properly, then we can move on, it looks like, from public comment, and then may I open it up to commissioner comments? One bit of comment. Yeah, this is a work in progress. I figure we can continue to work on. So if you see anything that might be inaccurate or I missed or you'd like to see added in terms of its own, I personally, before starting this, I thought that there was like each town really had its own separate regulations. They do, but they don't really vary all that much, with the exception of some of the speed regulations, and by that I'm referring to Marin County and the Mill Valley Sausalito bike path, as we've talked about on this commission a number of times, has a 10-mile-per-hour speed limit, whereas otherwise it's 15 miles per hour. We had talked about how our town rules have an 8-mile-per-hour speed limit when pedestrians are present, although I didn't see that specifically in our e-bike regulations, so it's probably in a different part of the code. But I would like to continue to work on this over the course of this year. So if I don't see any other commissioner comments, no action to take, we can close this item and move on to our action items. David, I'll send it over to you, or do it. So our first action item is a presentation. David, I'll send it to you for the first action item.
Okay. First action item is a presentation from the Heritage and Arts Commission on the Old Rail Trail mural that has been completed. We have Nora Noguez here, who's our chair of the Heritage and Arts Commission, along with David Schwartz with Schwartz Landscape Architecture, that will also be presenting this evening to the commission on phase 2 of this project. Phase 2 of this project is landscaping, and that is, the final piece that will complete the mural that's already there. So with that being said, I will have Nora come up to the podium or to the table and provide a little bit of background on this project, and then after that we'll have David come in and talk about the landscaping elements.
Just a correction, I was chair at the time that the proposal
Yes.
came before this commission.
Correct.
But I'm
correct.
now just a regular old commissioner.
Welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you, and a chair. I would say hello to the vice chair, but he's not here. Commissioners. So just to give you a little bit of a background, because you were not all here the first time this came before this commission, and that is to say that there was an ugly cinder block wall on the old rail trail right before the houses, right in the shade of the knoll. And it was really a serendipitous discussion between myself as the chair of Heritage and Arts and a neighbor, Vashko Moraes, who's co-creator of this project, that was the genesis of this. What happened is we got to talking. I was running for town council, as a matter of fact, at the time, getting signatures. And I said, he asked what I did. I said, well, I'm a lawyer, but I'm also chair of the Heritage and Arts Commission. I said, and there's a cinder block wall on the old rail trail that I think would be a perfect place to have something artistic that is also historical, because we're not just heritage and arts, we are heritage as well as arts. So he said, well, did you know that the 3 public schools in Tiburon are the former sites of Azorean dairies? And I said, no, I had no idea. So, I mean, everybody knows about, the train history in this town, but very few people knew that it was Azorean immigrants who came here looking for a better life that operated the dairies. And there was one at Reed, one at Del Mar School, and one at Bel Air. So he said, wouldn't it be great to have a dairy, a picture of the dairy? So what happened is we got the town historian, Dave Gotts, who got a picture of what the dairy at Del Mar looked like in the 1800s, got a Portuguese artist to do a contemporary rendering of what that school or what the dairy looked like. It got sent to Portugal, fired onto azulejos, which are the traditional classic tiles from Portugal. And so that became the Portuguese dairy mural. We were fortunate enough to have the president of Portugal, who came to Tiburon to do the groundbreaking for the ceremony. We had other notable dignitaries. Secret Service, of course, was here. But the thing that was most touching about this is the fact that through the superintendent of schools, I got the town historian and an expert on the immigrants, the Azorean immigrants, to do a lecture to the students at Del Mar, who then came down for the groundbreaking and who got to meet the president of Portugal, and the whole sense of community. We got donations from numerous groups in town, but it was just an outpouring of love for the history, the contribution of the Azorean immigrants to this town, and how it is so integral to, Tiburon, and also to give the students a context for the history of their town, to get pride in their town, and to understand the origins of their town. So that's a little bit of the background. If you have any questions, I can answer them. Otherwise, we can go to the landscape. There is a picture, so you'll be able to see it. I don't know if they have the, okay, great. So you can see the picture. That being the case, I will let David Schwartz come forward.
Welcome, Mr. Schwartz.
Okay, so Vasco looked me up from a friend, Peter Brooks, who Brooks Tree Care does a lot of the arborist work in town, and corralled me to help with this, and I was more than happy to do that. Born and raised here. There were dairies here when we were kids running around. So this was sort of a natural outgrowth of that. And so we've come up with a plan that incorporates Mediterranean, low-maintenance, water-resistant plants, drought-resistant plants to the project. Worked closely with the Public Works to collaborate on some of the installation and maintenance issues that we've got going here. And so this was an outline, I'm sure you've all had a chance to look at this, of the process that we would employ to, bring this to completion here. And so at the bottom here, we got the planting plan. So we're sort of accentuating the curve of the mural wall with oak trees. These are cork oak trees, reminiscent of the Mediterranean landscape in Portugal, the Azores. And then Arbutus marina, which is another Mediterranean tree. It's got the red bark and the red fruits flowering, with bands of succulent plants. The purple, the blue, the yellow, and the red would be different aloes. And then in the background, band of Echium, which come from the Azores. All very low maintenance, and we're in a park setting here, not an open space setting. I know there's some concerns about Echium spreading, but it's really very well contained in an easily maintained sort of more like a garden setting rather than an open space setting. And then you can see the two signs on either side, and some little boulders placed in there for erosion control where the wall steps down. So well thought through in terms of, you got a pointer. We have to press. There you go. Signs, boulders where the wall steps down to keep erosion from happening around the edges. And so the whole area would be, heavily mulched with wood chips, and hopefully getting Public Works and students involved in the maintenance program here. Okay? And here's a plant list. So some of the low-growing ground covers might be lantana. We can scroll down. Some succulent ground covers, big, bold agave attenuatas. And then these are the aloe arborescens in red and then yellow. The Echium, which we're all pretty familiar with. Cork oak. And Arbutus marina. And so there. So Echiums will be along the top here. And then stepping down, we have bands of aloes. The boulders would go in these little corners. Signage here and here. And then the trees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, creating a crescent of the area. So with that, I thought I'd turn it over to any questions that you may have.
Thank you. And yeah, do we have any commissioner questions? Commissioner Judge?
Curious what the maintenance plan entails.
Pulling weeds. Public Works is gonna work with us on the irrigation system, so it'll be an inline irrigation system, so we won't have specific emitters that can pop off easily. So, the drip tube will be buried, so the irrigation maybe once a month, maybe twice a month initially for the trees, everything else, very low maintenance. And essentially just, pulling weeds. And with the heavy mulch, weeds should pull very, very easily there. And, like to get the students involved. That's always a challenge, but, once they, so many kids walk past here, so if there's some community involvement, it's less likely to be vandalized or, let go and turn into a weedy mess, so we're hopeful.
Thank you, Commissioner Judge. Any other questions from the commission?
Yes, I do. I have a few questions. Thanks. Thanks for the plantings and, first, on the picture that you have up there, those 2 trees there, is part of the plan to have those removed? I don't know what
I
those
think these are
species
oak trees, probably not, but working on a maintenance program for the new trees, pruning so that they grow in a compatible way. Over here, there are some, acacia, black acacias that I'd like to see removed, and I'm sure the city would too. So, discussions about removing the invasives, but keeping any native plants.
Okay, so not sure on the removal of the coastal oaks that are there that are natives.
We have no plans to do that at all.
Okay, and then the size of the other trees that you're planning on putting in, I mean, just looking at that space and knowing that space, that's a pretty steep hill.
Yep.
I guess, what's the size of the trees?
Well, at first I thought we'd do 36 to get some oomph to it, but it's too steep for a 36-inch box, so we're probably gonna go 15s or 24s to get started.
15 gallons.
Yeah, 24-inch box or 15-gallon.
Right, and how big do those trees grow when they get to a certain maturity?
In ideal circumstances, they might be 25 feet tall, but this is all subsoil. It's an old railroad grade, so there's very little topsoil there, so it's rocky. With managing irrigation and pruning, I'm anticipating that the canopies will be like 15, and keep them about 15. They're easily pruned.
Was the increasing of the tall trees there that you were suggesting, as well as the invasive Echium, AKA Pride of Madeira, was there a reason why you chose those 2?
Which two?
The non-natives?
Well,
I know most of those are non-natives that you're suggesting.
Right. Well, they're Mediterranean plants, and so we've got.
They're non-natives, correct?
Right, exactly.
Thank you.
Well, most natives here will get eaten by the deer and be much more of a maintenance headache. We could use coffeeberry perhaps, maybe some manzanita, but in my 40 years of landscaping in southern Marin, there's certain things that will thrive without netting and deer protection.
Okay, and then the goal with the 5 trees that you're planting that grow to 25 feet in height, potentially, I'm assuming that those 2 on the left would be integrated in with the native coastal oaks that are there?
Yeah, the oaks are like here and here, I think, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other commissioner questions?
I don't have any questions. I have more comments.
Okay.
I'm a little disappointed. I think this is all great to beautify this area. Obviously, the mural is making it beautiful. I'm disappointed that these are not native plants that you're proposing, even though they are Mediterranean plants, hence the mural. I get your point, but we are in California and trying to promote, I think, more native plantings. So I'm a little disappointed in that. I personally own a bunch of strawberry trees, the arbutus, on my property. They are subject to disease very easily. Mine die in a matter of minutes. The tree companies can't figure out what it is. They don't know if it's a moth or they think it's something from the soil, so I'm doing all this soil remedies on my property. And they are called strawberry plants because these red berries are growing on them and they fall and onto the ground and they make a mess. My dog has eaten these berries and gotten gastronomical distress, throwing up, had to go to the vet ER, had to get fluids put in. It's not toxic, but it is distressful when your dog is throwing up that much. And I just wonder if putting those trees on Old Rail Trail where there's so many dogs and right by the young playground with little kids is a good idea, because those berries are going to fall on the ground and potentially be eaten by dogs or young children. So I'm not really a fan of that tree going in there. And I'd like to see more native plants instead of, especially not the Pride of Madeira, the Echium, in there. That's like a known invasive species. I don't think we should be planting that on purpose.
And Commissioner McInerney, I think I heard a question in there. What is, the Commissioner McInerney shared legit concerns on that. Would you
Well, this
wanna
is
respond?
Arbutus marina. I'm not sure what.
That's the
cultivar-
strawberry tree.
Well, no, the strawberry tree is Arbutus unido.
If you Google it, it's the same on
Well,
Google.
they're different cultivars, and we've been planting them for 20 years and haven't had any deaths. So I'm not sure what your particular soil situation is, but we're a design-build firm, and so we can't afford to plant things that don't succeed. And in my professional opinion, I think they'll succeed very well. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 45 years. Pride of Madeira is not invasive in a garden setting. It's invasive in open space settings, but bees love it. It's attractive. It's easy to maintain. Again, I love native plants. We've been planting native plants for years, but usually in a deer-protected area. There's only a handful of plants that'll survive out there without the deer mowing them down. So instead of this juggling act between what's going to actually manifest itself in a beautiful setting or plant a bunch of things that marginally survive. So that's always a challenge.
Any other further questions? I have some questions too, so just so you guys know.
Sorry, I have another question, and you just reminded me of a species that actually the town's planted a lot of by McKigney Green. It's it's Pigeon Point is one of the species. It's a California native. It's a ground cover.
Oh, Baccharis.
Yeah, Baccharis. Is there a reason why you didn't suggest any Baccharis here?
I mean, you could certainly do that as a low-growing ground cover in the foreground, but we're trying to create a layered effect, and so it'd be nice to have, a number of plants that create a nice layered effect. It's sort of a challenge. What's the palette that one can use that can be maintained and survive, and also be aesthetically pleasing? So that's often the challenge.
And then the number of agaves, AKA the foxtails, having a number of those in my own garden. Is your plan to plant just those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that many there? Or is it, because as you know, they clump and then they start growing quickly toward where the sun grows.
Yeah.
And they get pretty big.
So the idea was that this is a nursery for extending plantings wherever else the city wants to plant things. Because the succulent plants, if they're thriving, they just keep multiplying. And so it becomes a resource for other projects. And so we have satellite gardens, probably 20 satellite gardens in southern Marin where we go. These plants would actually come from other gardens rather than a nursery per se, because they do grow so, effectively.
They do.
Yeah. So that was the plan on that, yeah.
And then you looked, during your discussion, you looked at David about the O&M being done by Public Works. I'm assuming that wouldn't be Public Works, but it would be your contractors, the Green Team. Would that be fair?
That is a fair statement.
Okay, so it's part
But
of the. it would-
DPW would also help out if we need, but mainly the green team does all the maintenance along the old rail trail.
Which is an inspired group with a small cadre of individuals who are very passionate about what they're doing, which is great. And your Commissioner, your desires to have the youth take this on, having a 13-year-old who's an 8th grader at Del Mar, and my colleague to my left, I would venture that it would be, that's a great goal, but it may not be in reality. I just wanted to let you know about that.
It's always a challenge getting young people involved.
It's always good to have goals. Thank you.
Any other commissioner questions? I have some. Okay. Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the costs, Mr. Schwartz. The only number I see in here is the $1,500 for procurement of trees and shrubs. I may have missed other costs, but most of these other items are donated time. And even on the maintenance side, as we just talked about, are you envisioning that the $1,500 would be a total cost, and then just how would this all get paid for?
Well, we have a budget, and I've got Martinez Landscaping. They'll put a day in with 3 men.
Okay.
Brooks will be there with a crew, with helping for a day, and then what was the other one? Public Works said they'd work with us on the irrigation.
Yes, I wanted to ask specifically about that, if
So
any
it's-
sense.
We talked with Public Works about getting a backhoe out to loosen the soil. So if the backhoe's there, the soil gets grubbed, roots get pulled, soil amendment placed, holes dug. So that's pretty much in one day, we can attack that whole area and get it planted and amended. And Public Works would handle the irrigation and mulching. So it's not a big project.
And you mentioned you have a budget. When you say we have a budget, who do you mean?
I don't know. I haven't talked to anyone about the budget. I just
Ah.
put this together that if we had all these people working and Public Works did their part, the hard cost would be $1,500 for plants.
Okay.
Else from Public Works and donated by labor.
I think my last question is about I don't know how to say it other than kind of structural integrity of that area. I don't know if that's mentioned anywhere on here, but I'm super paranoid right now about trees falling, as they have been falling everywhere. And even there was a park, we were talking about this earlier at Sausalito, in Larkspur, that had a big redwood fall and a new facility. And, we all mentioned that there's a lot of traffic in that area. I'm going to ask you, just based on your expertise, and this is obviously a pretty steep, it's pretty steep right there. Do you have concerns planting a tree that could be up to 25 feet tall in that steep area?
Not if it's pruned on a regular basis, ornamentally pruned, so you don't get large limbs and a lot of wind load on it. I'd be more concerned about all the eucalyptus trees on that knoll before I'd be concerned about these smaller trees. Big limbs falling or a big tree falling down. But that's another can of worms.
Okay, I think that's all my questions. Any other commissioner questions before we move on? Seeing none, I'd like to open this up for public comment. And again, right now, public comment's only open to those folks in the room. That will be changed as of our July commission meeting. But seeing no hands on public comment.
No emails either.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Then I think we can move on to commissioner comments and discussion. Would anybody like to go first? Commissioner Hornbrook.
Sure, I'll kick us off. Well, first, the photo of the the mural as it is, I mean, that's great. It looks awesome. I'm glad that we've been able to move this forward. That's great. Commissioner McInerney and I were on the post when this came to us, so it's great. I do think, as with all many landscape desires, I think it's over landscaped for what you guys are designing and planning. I think all those trees and all those things is too much for that space. And I think it creates a potential safety hazard falling onto a heavily used trail. And the use of, I hear you on the deer, but the town has put plenty of non-natives in other places. Over by the restrooms, there's plenty of natives, and deer-resistant plants. And believe me, I know where all the deer-resistant plants are and where to buy them with my own garden. So I'd really like to see more natives in this plan. I think that, yes, the Echium are great, and the bees do love them, and they'll be bursting forth in about 2 weeks, I think, mostly down here in the peninsula. But we also know that a lot of folks, even along Old Rail Trail, the Echium that's planted there, people would like not to be there and removed. So I would really like there to be more natives, less tall trees, and nothing that would encumber the nice coastal oaks, which grow slowly and are native to the coast.
Thank you, Commissioner Hornbook. Any other commissioner comments, discussion on this? Commissioner McInerney.
I just echo Chuck's comments of wishing that there were more natives in this plan, and that it does seem slightly overplanted for the small area that it is. It seems a little too robust for that area, and I'd love to see natives and smaller trees as well.
Any other commissioner comments? Happy to go. Yeah, thank you. Thank you both for that, and thank you for the presentation. I mean, just kind of stepping back on the mural itself, I mean, congratulations to Commissioner Norquist and everyone involved, and Mr. Schwartz, if you're involved in that, it sounds like you were, in the unveiling of the mural. It was probably some of the most excitement I've seen in the town since we've moved here in 2019, and pretty wild to see the President of Portugal here along with Secret Service. It was a beautiful day, and really a testament to the vision of putting this mural there, which was just a cinder block wall when we got to town. So congratulations on that. So I don't want to take anyone to take comments about this proposal on the landscaping to take away from the beautiful mural that is there. I do, and thank my fellow commissioners for articulating it. It feels just overly landscaped. I personally, I don't know if you saw our last couple commission hearings, we had a lot of discussion about a tree being planted out at Blackheath Pasture, which I really don't personally see a lot of concerns with that one falling. It's flat land, there's not, a lot out there. Whereas this particular area, and in light of everything that we're seeing right now, and personally riding, my bike past this mural on my way to and from downtown and home, I have real concerns about the structural integrity on planting a tree of that size in that area. I'm not an expert on landscape architecture, so, Mr. Schwartz, I appreciate your perspective on it, but I don't know that we need 5 trees in that area that could overgrow it or could overgrow the other items. I'm personally not as concerned about the non-native species, but I take my fellow commissioners' recommendations to heart on that. So we probably need to move towards a motion because this is up for approval. And if I could ask David just about process from here, like if we approve this, does it still go or make changes or recommendations? Does it have to go to town council or?
So at this point, you're going to make a recommendation to either support the plan the way it is or not support it. And then at that point, when H&A goes to town council, they will go to town council with what they showed to you and what and what your recommendation is as a commission.
Okay, so am I hearing, is it not an option to support with recommendations?
Now, you can support it with recommendations that you'd like, but it's up to the project team to make those changes.
I see.
So your recommendation, so town council is relying on your recommendation, what you would like. So if you say we support it, but with making these recommendations, changing these types of plants out, that will go to town council with your recommendations. And then they'll be able to make a decision on that.
Thank you, David.
Yes, Mr. Schwartz.
So, in a desire to move this forward, we have some knowledgeable people on the board who understand native plants, and between the three of you, you could probably come up with a nice design. So you could make alternatives. I'm just trying to be a public servant here and help out. I have no investment in this design particularly, and I've been doing this at town council meetings for many, many years, not interested in a tussle or a redesign. So if you have ideas, you know, let's hash it out, figure it out. You know, the Bacchus is a great idea, coffee berry, maybe an oak tree. Keep it real simple, native plants. It's not speaking to the concept of the Portuguese, the Azorian theme, which we were speaking to as sort of a work of art, working with the colors of the mural, all of that. But these are just differences of opinion. So I don't think, you know, going to town, I'm not interested in going to town council and having, you know, get raked over the coals for not doing native plants. So.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. I appreciate that. Definitely would like to open it up for continued discussion amongst the commission. Any fellow commissioners have any additional thoughts? We're working towards a motion. Commissioner Judge?
I think I have questions, but,
We can still do questions.
okay.
Of course,
I think.
based on the discussion.
So I want to make sure I'm clear on what, like, the action point. So we can either support it with recommendations that go to town council to decide on, or we can oppose it with recommendations. Either way, it goes to town council. Town council makes a decision.
Yes.
And then I guess I'm curious, from your point of view, would you be open to revisions, or are you suggesting we accept what you've put forward, or we present an alternative? And I understand either case.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to.
Yeah, in one case, it's sort of an art project, you know, work with the Azorian theme. The madrone tree, they make a liqueur in the Azores in Portugal out of that fruit. The cork oak is very reminiscent of that environment where you have, you know, cork used for bottles of wine. The aloes that we're presenting here are all over the Azores and Portugal. So that was the direction we were going with this design. We could have said, okay, we're just going to do a native plant design and do what we were just talking about, you know, Bacchus and coffee berry and oak trees. That'd be fine also. It's just a question of the direction and theme that we were taking here. So another design would be just fine too, you know?
Yep. Appreciate your openness. I have a question too, actually, now based off that question. What was, what is your timeline looking like for the project? Were you looking to, I think I saw some dates here for early April. How fast were you looking to move? And the reason I'm asking is just based on your openness to receiving feedback and working together on this. Just wanted to see if there was any, what the time frame was, assuming that it's going to stop.
If not now, when?
Monsooning here.
Just right away, you know, just take care of it, get it in. We got a great wet year. Things will root in deeply this summer. And, yeah, so time's a wasting, basically. We have people that are interested in doing it and didn't want to draw out this process too much, but if we need to redesign, I'm sure that can be worked through. So April, early May to get it in.
Well, just back on commissioner comments and discussion, it seems like our options here are to move it forward as is. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of comfort with that. Moving it forward with recommendations, although, there's pitfalls in that. I don't want to send a message that we are opposed to this, because I think there's support for the project and the concept, but concerns on the details. And there's a time consideration here. So just with that said, I'd love to get additional commissioner thoughts and work towards a motion.
Well, I mean, so in terms of, so first, someone who's out in the ether said that, Commissioner Liz, you need to turn on your mic. Thanks, Commissioner Chaz.
That's right, I apologize.
It's okay, it came to me.
Thank you for that. Thank you to the person in the ether.
You're welcome. So, in terms of, potential native species, I appreciate the dial-in with the Mediterranean, but I think what we're trying to do is have more natives here. So, and not to mention, the mural that you have there has the classic golden brown of the California hillsides, right? So, why are we trying to? So, there's plenty of other species. I'm not an arborist, but sitting here in my arborist chair, you can do coastal rosemary. You can even do rosemary if you want. It smells great too, and the bees love rosemary. They're all over my rosemary right now. And then you could also do, as I mentioned, the California lilacs. They're low. They don't grow super tall, but again, it's a nice blue color.
I love it, but the deer eat it.
No, they don't eat. There's a deer-resistant species. So, and the town seems to have their lilacs, which is down at the north side of McKegney Green in that fenced-in area. As you head toward that big fenced-in area, that's all different California lilacs, and they're thriving. No, it's fenced in. Yeah, with a rail fence. Not by deer. Doesn't keep the deer out, right? Deer go everywhere. It's not a fence. It's not a 6-foot deer fence.
It's fenced in. It is a barrier to get.
It's a barrier to get them in, but we're here to work with them. But also, I'm not an arborist, and I think that this plan that it sounds like you guys put together very quickly before coming here, it sounded like, at least in your description. So I'm trying to do my best on this and trying to on the fly. But if we need a vote right now, I would vote no, and I would not recommend this at all, regardless of time, because I don't like being put on the spot to have to do something this quickly, particularly given it's not my expertise. And so, and also the height of a tree, I can't even recommend putting something like that would be a safety hazard. That's would be bad in common sense, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hornbook. Commissioner Judge.
Well, I guess I would offer, Mr. Schwartz, this was, as you said, like a volunteer service, and you did this pro bono, correct? So I would offer that I think it looks like a beautiful arrangement, and I'm very grateful for the time you spent thinking about it, and I agree with my colleagues that we, as stewards of the public space, have a sort of duty to look at or to, ask for consideration of native species. I do understand your artistic vision, and I think it sounds like it would be beautiful. And we're in the unique position of asking you if you would consider any revision with more native plants, and is that something you would consider doing? And if not, perhaps we can come up with something or put a call out, and I understand why you wouldn't, if you wouldn't don't want to be ungrateful, really do appreciate your time in this. But I think we are in the position now of having to come up with an alternative pretty quickly, so.
Well, oftentimes what happens, like in design review, staff reviews it. And yeah, trees could be oaks, you could use coffee berries, baccharis, approved native plants at a staff review level. And if there was staff that could review it with those criteria, it's sort of a no-brainer, pretty simple.
Does that sound like a course of action we could take?
So the concept is really this semicircle. And if we put an oak tree in there, that's a big tree too. So I'm not sure if we're at loggerheads about trees, you know?
Commissioner Hornbook?
I think you need to put something there that's makes sense, that doesn't potentially create a safety hazard. I mean, there's 2 trees that have been blown over just in my neighborhood today. I think there's one off on Moore West as well. And then also up at Centro West and Centro East where it comes together, that's completely shut down from.
And Spring Lane.
Oh, in Spring Lane, from non-native species too, by the way. So I think that if it doesn't have to be an oak tree, I don't even know why we're just not working with what we've got there. And I don't know what's to the south. I can see obviously this is a looking to the north perspective. But I think you just need to keep that in mind for the safety on the trail. I mean, it's just putting large trees there just doesn't make sense.
Thanks, Commissioner Hornbrook. I do have, based on that discussion, I have another question on the how long the process of planting all these plants and planting the landscape would take, Mr. Schwartz. How long would you expect the actual planting to take, and how long would this project take?
Planting's a day. 5, 6 people for a day.
And David, if I may put a question to you, just on DPW/Green Team/ other volunteer items that are on here from your perspective, how long would the project take? And just if it's not clear, I'm asking the question just based on the June date that is out there. I wanted to get a sense from you how long you would see this project taking.
Well, we have 3 dedicated crews that are in our Parks Division. So, balancing their time with the regular course of work that they're assigned to, they'll have it done within a day or 2 or 3, depending on if anything else is assigned to them.
Sounds good. And then follow up to that with the weather we're having and rain expected through next week, all those sorts of things. Would DPW take that into consideration and wait for the weather to kind of end? Or is that not a consideration on DPW's part?
We don't, the weather would not affect us on working here.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioner discussion items? Well, it does not seem as if there is support to move this forward as is. I would be open to, our options as I see it are make a recommendation to move this forward with those recommended changes. However, I do agree that town council would probably like to see a little bit more analysis and certainty coming out of this commission, just judging from some of the things that have moved forward since I've been on the commission and the feedback received. I'm personally open to, this is only our second meeting of the year. I'm open to having a special meeting at sometime in April and giving the proponents an opportunity to take our feedback and come back to post in order to hopefully address, I think, the concerns about, the concerns are clear, the non-native species and seeing other species incorporated into this, and on the just general integrity and safety of trees being planted on that steep hill right there. I'm open to that if there might be support amongst fellow commissioners on that, and then we can put some other items on the agenda too if we hold a special, say in early April or in sometime in April. Any discussion on those
Well,
recommendations?
I guess I have a question to our expert in the room. If we just remove the trees, take out the echium, put in, because I get your sense of urgency. That would have been nice, it had been mentioned at the earlier part of the meeting too. Just an aside. But putting the coastal rosemary, potentially, it's not as nice as the echium. It's not as, and keeping some of the succulents, which are non-native, but still don't spread like the echium does. Particularly like particularly it's right now, you see all the agaves out that are blooming. Or would that mess up the plan?
No. No, the trees give you that canopy, the semicircle, but you get the same effect with the aloe arborescens. So if we had a bold band of the aloe arborescens with the aloe attenuata in front and use baccharis on the fringes, the native plant, and then some other native in the background, like I'd love to use the ceanothus in the background instead of the echium. But again, my experience is that the deer will eat it. But if we do that, you get the big blue background like you'd have with the echium, with the ceanothus, the layered succulents, no trees. Be fine, you know. My goal is to do something that when I look at it, I'll be proud of when we're done. And yeah, I'd be proud of an all native landscape, some boulders, some baccharis, some native plants, but I just don't think it's going to, it's going to take a lot more maintenance to get it established. That's one thing. And I know what happens with maintenance, it's tough. But yeah, your recommendation on those modifications would be fine, and I'd be happy to work with staff, David, AKA staff, and then we, you know, forward you all this, the new plan too. So it's not like we're just running wild with this. You'd have a chance to weigh in on it. I do a new plant list, and I'm just trying to streamline the process.
And the aloe gets pretty big anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you guys know what the aloe, it's an aloe plant. The picture is a good one, but it gets pretty tall and big. They're blooming right now. There was one at the corner of
They are.
Ridge.
Right there.
And yeah, they get to be about 4 to 5 feet tall.
Yep. Yeah, so that would give a nice background to the whole thing.
I mean, they're very colorful. They're not, they need to be maintained fairly well, or they kind of look trashy. Just, that's we have some in our house, and if we don't maintain them enough, they look,
Yeah.
the
It'll
older,
simplify the whole process too. Digging tree holes on a slope and staking and all of that, much more of a process.
so I'm trying to help move this forward to my fellow commissioners, not create
Appreciate that.
trouble.
Thank you, Commissioner Hornbrook. Does that mean you want to have a motion, maybe?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion that the design plan, I want to get the title of everything right. What are we calling this?
Old Rail Trail mural project.
There it is, right on the top, where it says subject. Thank you. The design plan for the plantings at the Old Rail Trail mural project. Does not include any large trees, but would include a majority of the design plans, but would not include echium. And would be substituted with other areas would be substituted with native plants. including potentially coastal rosemary, California lilac, or even rosemary for that matter, which is totally different. Rosemary the spice versus coastal rosemary, which is not a spice. You don't have to put the spice stuff in.
I wasn't planning on it. Okay, give commissioners a second to weigh that, see if anyone has any comments, additions, thoughts, or seconds.
It's clear in there that the arbutus and the echium are not approved.
Correct.
Yeah, the arbutus wasn't. Thank you.
You said trees, but just want to make sure that we named the tree.
Arbutus tree.
Yep. To make one correction, and it should say Old Rail Trail Portuguese Dairy Mural Project. So we need to insert Portuguese Dairy.
Thank you.
Sorry, just getting this right.
Want to read it back?
Yeah, let me read back what I think we have. So the motion would be to approve the design plan for the Old Rail Trail Portuguese mural, dairy mural, thank you, I had the wrong word there, dairy mural project with the following recommendations: that the design plan does not include any large trees, specifically large arbutus marina trees. It would include, and without echium, but the majority of the design plan otherwise would move forward, and we'd recommend that we would substitute those items with additional native plants. Is that clean enough? Should I do it again?
You might want to say substituting other native plants, including California lilac, coastal rosemary,
Do we want to be that,
potentially including. I think the town would go like, well, what are they thinking about?
Coastal, was it?
Coastal
Rosemary.
rosemary
Rosemary. Okay,
and California lilac.
got that. Okay, let me reword that one last time. So, the motion on the table would be to approve the design plan for the Old Rail Trail Portuguese Dairy Mural project, including the majority of the current design plan, with post recommendation not to include or to remove any large trees, specifically large arbutus marina trees, and removing echium from the plan, substituting those items with additional native plants, including California lilac and coastal rosemary. Potentially including California lilac and coastal rosemary.
I think potentially is key because I think we maybe don't.
Don't want to
be
hamstring
super
them.
Prescriptive.
Yeah.
Fair point.
In case there's costs or whatever.
You guys can have my foxtail agave. Happy to donate any.
There's lots of other options that are native species as well. Just Google native plants, Northern California.
Do we feel comfortable with that motion? And does anyone have a second?
That's my motion. I can't second it.
Ah, that's right. I just restated Commissioner Hornbook's motion, so I can make a second. So I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes with the revisions.
Get something to you later in the week. All right, thank you.
And please keep us updated on the visit in June. Thanks, Mr. Schwartz.
Just FYI, Del Mar's graduation is on the 9th, So that's going to be just busy time around campus. So, right. I don't know if you're like looking for kids or engagement just with the middle school, it's going to be, their mind's going to be end of year and graduation on Friday. I don't know. You'd have to ask. I should know that, but I don't know yet. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And now we can move on to action item tonight, number 2, on the open space vegetation management contractor selection. This is an item by staff, so David, I'll send it over to you.
All right, commissioners, thank you. So this item here is a recommendation to select a contractor to perform some work in our open space. So on February 13th of this year, we went out with a request for proposals to select a contractor to perform work in our open space and remove invasive species and reduce the fire loads that we have out there. We advertised this request for proposals for 3 weeks, and we received 3 bids. One of the bids was from Capra Environmental Services, and Capra Environmental Services utilizes goats and sheep for vegetation management. A second bid proposal that we received was from the Conservation Corps North Bay, who we use here in town frequently, a lot. And the third one is from Forrester and Kroger Landscape Maintenance, which is local as well, and they do a lot of work for the county and Mill Valley. DPW reviewed all 3 proposals, not taking cost into consideration because these are requests for proposals. So we look at the proposals, look at what they're offering, and cost is second. Just so that the commissioners know and the members of the public, Capra Environmental came in at $65,000 for 50 acres of work. Just so that you know, we have 250 acres of open space. Of that 250 acres, I would say about 50 acres of that has sensitive habitat, sensitive plant life that we would still need to utilize handwork in there. But the other 200 acres, we can use goats. Conservation Corps North Bay came in at $723,000 for year 1 work. And Forrester and Kroger came in at $152,000. Again, cost was not something that we looked at because we looked at their proposal. My predecessors, both Pat Barnes and Stephen Palmer, did like the fact of using and utilizing sheep and animals in our open space. Our open space management plan that was created back in 2010 allows the use of sheep, goats, cows, and horses in our open space. Our new 5-year short-term open space implementation plan also allows for use of animals in our open space to control our vegetation. So looking at our current plan, looking at the proposals, and reviewing the costs, it's advantageous that we use some type of hybrid model here, because we do know that these goats eat a lot of these species that we have here, but not everything. They don't like coyote brush. Sometimes they don't like French broom, depending on how large it is. Little babies, they'll like them. So I think that when staff looked at this, we felt like we should give them a shot for $65,000, get them in there and have them work, in our open space, at least 50 acres of it, and use another contractor as well in conjunction to go in and do some cleanup work after they're done with those 50 acres. And add some more areas where the goats, the goats do not like. So in one area, I know Commissioner McInerney was in conversation with my predecessor, was the EV property. There's a lot of coyote brush there, a lot of French broom there, large coyote brush. That just won't, the sheep will not, the goats will not do that work out there. So that's an area where we can get in with another contractor masticate that area, and then after it's cleared up, we can, send some goats in there, after the fact. So what we're here, and I'll give you a little presentation that Capra put together here. Let's start with that. So Capra, they have a large fleet of environmentally friendly, self-propelled weed-eating goats and sheep. They have a herd of 9,000, 7,000 goats and 3,000 sheep. What they're going to bring here would be the goats because of the species that we have. The goats would do a better job in our area. They've worked in the past with, HOAs, other cities, towns, with Caltrans in Sonoma and Southern California, including South Bay and San Jose. They've been doing a lot of work out there in those corridors. Having goats out there also works well with our new IPM policy, where we don't like to use herbicides. These goats would eat the areas that we established them in, and then naturally fertilize the ground as well. They work 10 to 12 hours a day, sleep at night. Capra would have a goat herder there during the day with a dog herd that will herd and stay with the animals. At night, they will have a protective dog with them that will help protect them against coyotes or any type of danger that's around them. The goats will be fenced, so they will be fenced in certain areas, and typically the fencing is in a, like 1 to 2 acre zone. It's an electric fence as well, so that The herder will have his truck and his trailer here, and we're trying to figure out an area where we can have him stay during that process. And those 50 acres, they'll be able to complete in about a month. So depending on how well this pilot program moves forward, we're looking at including, infusing this goat herding and eating process throughout the year, because our open space management plan also has some species of vegetation that require removal during the winter and in the fall and in the spring. So I think it's a good combination to get them in here. They would start as early as April. We're planning on going to town council with your recommendation here April 19th, and they were going to start sometime in May. Solution, goats are safe. All their goats are safe. They're vaccinated, dewormed. As you saw in their proposal, they follow all the OSHA guidelines for this process for the goats. They pretty much eat everything that, blackberries, ragweed, mulberry, autumn olive, poison oak, which is big because some of our contractors that we have do not touch the poison oak. So they love poison oak, poison ivy, thistle. Here are some before-after pictures of some of the areas that this company has gone out and done some weed management for Caltrans, and some open spaces down in the South Bay, some before and after pictures. And the last shot here of the goat and what they can do for us. So at this point, my presentation is completed. But I think that this would be a win-win for the town to get these animals in here. And again, I'm calling it a pilot program. We'll see how well it works. And of course, we will hire another contractor. Will go out that will do the fine touch-up, cleanup work after the goats move out of those areas, and also go out and hire some contractors that need to go in there with actual equipment to masticate some of these larger areas where the goats can't enter, so that it'll be ready for them next season if it all works out. So at this point, I'd like to see if the commissioners have any questions.
Any questions?
Which 50 acres are you going to start with?
So in our plan, we have We are going to start, I know the first area, we haven't actually, we've looked at a lot. The contractor came out here. We are going to do that bowl area in the middle ridge underneath the hippie tree. So it's between the Fire Road, Via Paraiso, and Gilmartin, that bowl, that we'll have them start out there. They are going to hit every area that we have in our short-term implementation plan based on the year one work. And that, let me open up that.
Six, right? David? David, that's 26, parcel 26.
Parcel 26, yes. So we are going to work parcel 26, the bowl area. We're going to work the area that is parcel 28, just under EV property, which is the smaller portion beneath Via Paraiso.
Oh, got it.
And then there's also a few areas near Ring Mountain that we are looking at off of Indian Court.
Well, that would be 15. The Atkinson?
Atkinson's, and then we are also looking at it's area number 2, I believe. It's way up on the top.
Up by the water tower
Yes.
up there? Yeah, yeah.
La Crespa.
So those areas, they will start, and as we're moving forward, we will add more areas over to them.
Commissioner Hornberg?
Yeah, a couple questions. One is, as part of the having the goats there, do we know if there's any impact on
The open space man.
rare species that would be here, such as the Tiburon jewelflower or the lily, which is escaping me, the Marin lily, I think.
The dwarf, I believe.
Dwarf, yeah.
Yeah. So those areas, they will not enter.
Okay.
Yeah. So those areas are off limits. We will still have to get a contractor in there to hand work those areas. So we won't allow the goats in those sensitive areas where the Tiburon jewelflower are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that would be Middle Ridge.
Middle
basically.
Ridge, yeah. Middle Ridge is off limits.
Okay. And then and you kind of highlighted a little bit when you were discussing, do you guys have a kind of a plan, a community communication plan for these, given the hypersensitivity that people have in this town to the coyotes, and that just in addressing that kind of concern for all those folks that will be off of Gilmartin and that area right there, as well as the area up off of Indian Court, and as well as all three of those different neighborhoods would want to have some type of communication.
Absolutely, and this company here, they've been doing a lot of vegetative clearances, clearing out in the South Bay, and they've encountered, they encounter coyotes and bobcats in that area, and the animals that they use out there to protect the sheep and the electric fences, they say work very well in deterring some of these coyotes in the area. But they will also have a shepherd here that's going to stay here and maintain and make sure that they are safe, and his number will be out. We will let the residents and the neighborhoods know in which areas they're going to be at and who to contact, just in case they hear something funny or something's happening. But typically, the animals or the dog that they have that stays with the sheep overnight deters any type of predators that come near them. And the fence, it's a 120 fence, so it'll zap anything that tries to come near them.
So I guess the question or something to consider would be, when the goats come, that it won't entice. I guess you'd have to get this from the contractor, is if the goats come and all the stuff that's going on, there's not an enticement for coyotes to be interested, and afterwards it may lead potentially, with the understory and everything being eaten, that the coyotes may no longer want to hang out there. I don't know how to quantify that, but the neighbors may want to, or those neighborhoods may ask that question.
No, that is something we're going to have to work out. I'll get some answers from the contractor when we go to town council, because I know that will come up.
Yes, it will. Thanks, David. I love the goats.
I have a couple of questions. You mentioned as a pilot, are you calling it a pilot by a 1 year length of time, or is it the first 50 acres is the pilot, or what's the determination of the pilot?
The first 50 acres.
Oh, okay. Which will take about a month.
Correct.
Great. Okay. How's this work done now?
Right now, a lot of the work is neglected. We don't enter a lot of these places. Our budget is $60,000 in the spring and $60,000 in the fall. Our last contract was with one of the contractors that submitted an RFP. $60,000 got us about 2 weeks worth of work, which ultimately was probably about total combined efforts of about 3 acres worth of land being worked on.
Okay, that's helpful. The electric fence, you said it was a 120 fence. Is that at voltage?
Both, yes. Yeah. So they'll have signage out there. And that's one reason why we're not going to have these goats, near areas where we have trails up on the, on the Middle Ridge. We're going to have them in that bowl area, but the fence will be off. They will have some safety signs out there and some caution tapes, but it's basically cattle fence, and if it's done correctly, it'll give you a nice little zap.
And just wanted to kind of piggyback up what Commissioner Hornbrook asked on the kind of notice and communication plan. In the RFP response, it says that Capra, I don't know, maybe this was an RFP, now I'm actually not sure, but that the limitations on work would be Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. David, was that our town requirement, or was that what Capra recommended?
No, that was ours because it actually went out to all the, to a whole bunch of contractors to submit offers on. But with them being, animals, goats, they're going to work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They sleep at night typically, but then sometimes, depends. If you have a full moon, they wake up and they start eating again. So you might get 15, 16 hours of work a day from them. That's why they can clear 50 acres that quickly.
Wait, so question on that. So do we have to be concerned about goat noise overnight, or has that been an issue that Capra has flagged?
They're quiet animals. They'll sleep majority of the night. The areas where we're going to have them, they're going to be in some near neighborhoods. But again, this is all a pilot. If they're up really making a lot of noise, which I don't think they will, according to this contractor, you might get a few that wake up only when it's a full moon.
Thank you. I'm not going to follow up questions on that. Any other commissioner questions?
I guess, when was this pilot going to take place?
We're thinking about starting sometime in May this year.
As part of your pilot and to engage the community, you may also want to see if there's an opportunity for the school district or St. Hilary's to, if there's a place with the contractor, to say this would be an interesting opportunity for a class to come and see what's going on from an education perspective. I would just recommend this. Maybe you can talk to see if they've done that before in the South Bay or other locations. Again, to build community support for a pilot. Mm-hmm. For those that may be concerned about a bleat they bleat, right? Do goats bleat?
Yeah.
Okay. Cows moo, so goats bleat, I guess. When the bleeding that may occur on that one full moon during that month of time.
Absolutely, yes. We definitely will get the school districts involved.
I would as an FYI to them, you may want to just ask the goat contractor if they've done that before. Mm-hmm. So you can then, when you reach out to the school district and to St. Hilary's, to say like, oh, this is what they're doing, and
this is what they've done before. And maybe they could say like, no, we don't want the kids nearby at all as well. So just,
Right.
thanks.
I have a few questions, just more questions about the coyotes, because that sounds worrisome. So the fence is, how high is it? And do they really know that it can keep coyotes out? Does this contractor have experience working in high coyote areas such as this?
Yes, yes. So the fence is a 4-foot fence. It's similar to the cattle fence. It has the wiring across, 4 or 5 wires across that are electrified. So it'll zap any animal, make it uncomfortable for them to get in there. Plus the guard shepherd dog that they have in there will scare any type of aggressive animals that want to come hurt the goats. It'll keep them away.
And the contractor's aware of the coyote problem in the area?
Yes, I
correct?
made that
Okay.
aware.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been made aware of that, and he said he didn't seem to be worried, and he said, "Don't worry about it. We've dealt with this in the South Bay."
Okay. I think that's it.
Thank you. Any other commissioner questions?
Will clearing this hopefully open up access to some of these open spaces that might not have been accessible because they've been so heavily vegetated?
Absolutely. I mean, once we open this up, we can get in there as a commission and see if there's any type of pedestrian improvements we'd like to put, in some of these areas that can, close some gaps or open up some entrances in these open spaces.
And then I'm just going to reiterate one more time, coyote, 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 just make sure that we're not, dangling some fruit and creating a bigger problem. But I think
Yes.
Having goats is a great idea to help clear the invasive overgrowth that we don't have the time or manpower to do ourselves.
Yes.
At a good cost.
Excellent cost, yes.
Any other commissioner questions? If not, we can move to public comment. Again, we are,
Everyone line up.
for those not in the room, there is no one attending the meeting at the moment. And again, we are not yet on a hybrid model until our next meeting. So seeing nobody in the room, David, can we close public comment?
Yes,
Or
no-
is there anything?
no
any
emails either.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So now we can move to commissioner discussions. Anybody have any discussion points they'd like to make?
Just would add that I think this is a good year to look at robust brush clearing, given all the rain, and so it sounds like this is a good plan so long as the goats are protected.
Great call. My only, just try to summarize here, maybe we're all on the same page. I agree, great idea, love the idea of utilizing goats. It's within our current open space policies. The use of goats, as we've heard, is clearly efficient, safe. This work is needed, as has not been happening, which was very important to hear. It will help address invasive species and particularly fire safety. Sounds like it was affordable or the best cost perspective. Just the proposal itself was by far the most robust. Love the idea of opening up additional trail space and agree that it's a win-win, particularly when this is a limited pilot. We have a lot of opportunity to iron out any issues after those initial 50 acres. So with that, any other commissioner comments? Otherwise, happy to make a motion on this. I'd move to support the selection of Capra Environmental Services for the open space vegetation management contractor selection.
I can second.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Motion passes.
Great. Seeing no other action items, I will happily adjourn the March 21st, 2023 post-commission meeting.